Hi, readers. I was thinking about how we're using Edward Tulane to um, just be totally confident in our abilities to understand our characters better. And part of that is taking a look at some of the other characters in our story. And I was reminded about what we learned when we were reading Because of Winn-Dixie, that authors do not just randomly put in secondary characters, right? They don't just choose characters and toss them into a story. Those secondary characters have a role to play. And usually those secondary characters help our main character to climb up that mountain, reach the climax of our story, and then tie up all of those loose ends as they resolve all of their conflicts. So, of course, I started thinking about Opal and Winn-Dixie and our secondary characters in that story. And of course, I remember Miss Franny Block. Then we have pinch-faced Amanda Wilkinson and Gloria Dump. And what we talked about is when we were reading this read aloud, those secondary characters usually can fit into one of these roles. You know, if you're a sidekick, that means you're just a pal tagging along for the adventures with your main character. If you're an advisor, you're usually giving them advice. That's why we call it an advisor. You're helping them to discover what the moral or lesson is that they're supposed to be learning. And if you're a challenger, it means not necessarily that you're an enemy of the main character, but that you are causing them to kind of think a little bit deeper. There's going to be a little bit of tension between the challenger and the main character. So what we discovered in Because of Winn-Dixie is that Gloria Dump was our advisor, right? She was telling Opal not to judge people. She was telling Opal she couldn't hold on to her past. And we know that Amanda Wilkinson was the challenger because that was definitely a character that Opal was not very friendly with in the beginning, but as she learned more about Amanda Wilkinson, she was challenged to kind of go beyond what she was judging people as. And Franny Block, with her wonderful stories at the library, was a great pal to Opal throughout her climbing up the mountain and then right back down as she resolved all of her conflicts. So, my challenge to you is to think of our characters in The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. And of course, the first secondary character I think of is Abilene, right? And if you were to think kind of how Abilene engages in our story and how she interacts with Edward Tulane, think about what role she might play in the life of Edward Tulane. Then we meet Pellegrina, who's also an important secondary character because, of course, we wouldn't even have an Edward Tulane without Pellegrina. That is who created Edward Tulane and then who gave Edward to Abilene. But beyond being the creator of Edward Tulane, I think Pellegrina has another important role in our story. And just recently, we've met the fisherman Lawrence, who found Edward Tulane in the ocean. And there are some important conversations that Lawrence has with Edward Tulane that I think will help you figure out what role he is going to play. So up next, you are going to be looking at a few passages from our read aloud and asking yourself, what does this tell me about this secondary character? What role does this secondary character play? And then that can help us make some predictions and can help us figure out where we might see that character show up again as Edward confronts more problems. Good luck, readers.